All right, guys. So we got to talk about Kamala Harris once again. As there's been some news coming out about the relationship between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, particularly in regards to the first year that Kamala was on the job. And apparently it wasn't a great relationship. In fact, Joe Biden was reportedly annoyed by Kamala Harris and called her a work in progress, as Kamala Harris did not like the assignments that Joe Biden was giving her, particularly when it came to the border. And that caused some friction and issues in their relationship that visibly showed up throughout the first year of, that administration. Now, again, with books and stories that come out like this is funny because when stuff come out like this about the Trump administration, the mainstream liberal media celebrated, right? Because it was something for them to gossip about. But when stuff like this comes out, the mainstream media gets upset because they feel like Kamala Harris is being unfairly criticized because of her skin color and she allegedly has a vagina, right? That's just kind of how it goes. Which leads me to this segment from MSNBC in which a journalist by the name of Jong-Fast is going to argue that despite the media coverage, the negative media coverage of Kamala Harris, she's actually been more accommodating as vice president than any man in history, okay, of being a vice president of the United States. I'm not sure exactly how she knows that, but she says that, and basically she goes on to claim that any criticism of her comes from a place of misogyny and racism. So without further ado, go ahead and roll the clip.
So that actually, Molly, might take a couple of cycles. I mean, the truth is, if Donald Trump wins again, he may not win enough people to be the president. But if he doesn't run, his base may not go over to Ron DeSantis or whomever else does that. So, but that doesn't mean that Democrats don't have to think about their future, and Democrats are thinking about their future for 2024, which brings us to the vice president, Kamala Harris, whom, not everybody sort of gets what she's up to. So you had an interview with her, and I want to read an excerpt from what you wrote about it. You interviewed her for Vanity Fair. It was published on Thursday, and you've written, perhaps it's a function of the world in which world we all inhabit, but the female vice president is way friendlier and more accommodating than a man in her position would ever be. Harris is saddled with the burden of being first. Anything she does will attract more scrutiny. Anything she doesn't do will attract more scorn. There's a tension that permeates the world surrounding her. Being first is never comfortable. Tell me more about this.
So I actually had interviewed her for the podcast for a very short interview. So I had some experience and I knew her staffers who are really excellent, and I had talked to them and I understood, I've interviewed a lot of powerful women and also men. And so I've been able to sort of see the contrast between the way they interact. But what I saw with her staff is there's an anxiety. This is the highest a woman has ever been elected in this country, right? And this is a country that does not naturally elect women leaders, right? In fact, in a way, we're a little bit
weirdly so compared to most Western democracies, actually.
Exactly. I mean, Margaret Thatcher was 20 years ago, and the United States has been very, very slow. So I do think there's a lot of anxiety. I also think there's a lot of inherent misogyny and racism in the way that news is reported, in the way that people read news, in ways that we don't even know. There's an intersectionality that we should be thinking about when we read about women, when we read about people of color, that is inadvertent sometimes, and sometimes it's not, but it really is a problem. And I think it's a problem that has dogged vice president. And so what I tried to do is I tried to go into that interview, and I knew a lot about her, and I had talked to a lot of people, and I had read a lot of stuff. And, there was a lot of stuff she had done over the last 2 years that just had either been reported in a very pointed way, like her trip to the DNZ, right? She went to the DNZ. She went to North Korea, and it was reported in a way that was a little bit, to make her seem diminished. And so I tried to go in there and look at all the things she had done, the countries she had been to, and the work she had done as vice president. Also, vice president, very complicated job, right? It's not the president, right? You're not supposed to be president. You're supposed to work for the president. Mm-hmm. So it's a very nuanced thing to write about.
Yeah, so there are so many things I love about that segment, guys. I mean, first and foremost, again, she says that Kamala Harris was way more accommodating as a vice president than a man would ever be. Like, what does that mean? Like, what are you trying to say? Like, how many men have you sat down with in the White House, or vice presidents that you sat down with in the White House, for you to definitively make that statement that because Kamala Harris is a woman, she's going to be way more accommodating than a man? I'm not sure exactly how you come to that conclusion. Again, I'm not sure. Again, how many male vice presidents has Molly Jong-Fast sat down with in order to come to that conclusion? But what she basically goes on to say is that criticism or media coverage of Kamala Harris comes from a place of misogyny and racism, okay? Because, you know, we got to keep in mind intersectionality, whatever that means, right? I don't know what that term means, intersectionality. You hear that term a lot, okay? I still have no clue exactly what it means, okay? But they use it quite a bit, okay? It's woke language, which tells me that this writer here is super woke, okay? She's probably a feminist herself. Her mom is a feminist, a famous feminist. So she's probably got a little bit of feminism in her. And one of her main examples in regards to the racist/sexist coverage that Kamala Harris is getting is people characterizing Kamala Harris as diminished. For example, when she went to the DMZ in between North and South Korea, and she feels like that's unfair, I guess, right? It comes from a place of racism/sexism. No. It can't be the fact that Kamala Harris just openly claimed that the United States and North Korea was in an alliance and praised that alliance at the DMZ.
So the United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. And it is an alliance that is strong and enduring.
Yeah, so it couldn't be that obvious gaffe, which is why people were calling Kamala Harris diminished, right? Why they were criticizing her. Couldn't be that. It's simply because she has a vagina and she's a so-called woman of color, right? That has to be what it is. And what I love about this, guys, is that these are the same people who have no problems openly criticizing other women that don't agree with them politically, like Amy Coney Barrett. She's criticized Amy Coney Barrett. She's also criticized the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, right? She called her a fascist. And I'm like, okay, so why is it that it's totally fine to criticize conservative or right-leaning women, right? They're on the other side of the political aisle. They have political opinions that you don't agree with. It's totally fine to criticize them. And there's never accusations of sexism, right? Nobody ever says, well, you're criticizing them because you hate women, right? Nobody ever says that. But when it comes to any criticism of anybody on the left, particularly when it comes to women or so-called people of color, in Kamala Harris's case, she has a couple of infinity stones of wokeness here. She is a woman. She has a vagina, allegedly, and she's black, allegedly, as well, too, right? Even though she's also half Indian, but she's a person of color, right? She's a woman of color. It has to come from a place of sexism/racism. It can't just simply be that, Kamala Harris is just not doing a good job. Kamala Harris is just not very likable to the American people. I mean, Kamala Harris was not likable to the Democrats, right? In the Democrat primary, she got destroyed by Tulsi Gabbard, okay? And I think she dropped out of the race before even a vote was cast, okay? Before they even got to the primary voting. So again, I'm trying to figure out, where is all this racism and sexism? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Because Kamala Harris, just objectively speaking, has done a bad job at being vice president, okay? The things that she has been assigned by the Biden administration to do, she has not accomplished. She's failed at, okay? Like, for example, she's the border czar. However, she has no interest in the border whatsoever. She won't talk about it. She won't do any interviews about it. Even though we currently have an ongoing crisis, she don't want to answer any questions about it. She's nowhere to be found because she clearly does not want that assignment. And because she doesn't want the assignment, she's pissed that Biden assigned it to her. She decided, I'm going to wave the white flag. I'm going to give up. I'm going to let this country be invaded by millions of illegals. You think that she's supposed to get a pat on the back for that, right? You don't think it's fair to criticize her for that? Even the assignments that I don't necessarily agree with, right? Like, policies like the whole voting rights stuff and some of the other things that Kamala Harris has been assigned, she hasn't got accomplished, right? Even though I don't want her to accomplish those things, I'm glad she's failing on those things. I'm not glad she's failing on the border. I wish that she actually would actually do something about border security. Even those assignments that I want her to fail on, she's failed, right? She's failed. Joe Biden said that Kamala Harris was the last person in the room that he talked to before the withdrawal in Afghanistan. You know, probably one of the worst disasters that have happened in the Biden administration. Kamala Harris was the last person in the room that he spoke to. This is what he said. You don't think it's fair to criticize her for that? To say, hey, you know, you bear some responsibility in regards to that disaster? The fact that the Taliban has taken back over that country? You don't bear some responsibility? Consider how you were the last person in the room, okay, before the president made his decision? I'm just saying. It's also not like every time Kamala Harris talks, she's inspiring much hope or confidence in the American people that she knows what's going on and that she's not in over her head, because every time she talks, every time she speaks, is always word salad and generic platitudes, right? She never has anything to say of substance. Is it unfair to criticize her for that as well too? Right? We can't criticize her for that. What can we criticize Kamala Harris for that is legitimate? Well, there's nothing that we can criticize her for that's legitimate, because allegedly she has a vagina, and you know, she's also a woman of color, right? Which means that there can be no criticism whatsoever. They did the exact same thing with Ketanji Brown Jackson, right? They did the exact same thing with her when she was getting confirmed to the Supreme Court. Republicans criticized her record. That's racist. That's sexist. But all these people had so much smoke for Amy Coney Barrett, going as far as to say that, oh, well, she's not a real woman and she doesn't speak for women, blah, blah, blah. She's a white supremacist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All this criticism for her from the left. And I didn't hear any of these woke journalists standing up for Amy Coney Barrett say, hold on. Some of these criticisms, which again, a lot of them were unfounded. A lot of them were ridiculous. It was flat out lies and smears. They never said, well, this sounds like sexism, right? This sounds like misogyny. Okay, all the criticism y'all are directing towards Amy Coney Barrett, like, come on now. You know, you can't criticize women like this. You're not supposed to talk about women like this. Again, there's only open season on so-called minorities that are not liberal or Democrats. You can say whatever you want to them. But if you criticize any so-called minority that is a Democrat or a liberal, it's automatically racism, sexism, it's some form of bigotry. It's just amazing how this works. It really is. And the people that perpetuate this the most are these white liberal elite types. Like this woman right here, okay? They perpetuate this nonsense the most because it is a way for them to score points, okay, with a certain crowd, while at the same time deflecting any type of criticism away from their party and the people that they want to win. It's absolutely amazing. It really is. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.